I think I probably would have preferred Rosa if it had been a pure historical. Of course, if you did that, then you kind of remove the plot and it would require a massive rewrite, and maybe my suggestion that this should have been a pure historical, with the plot possibly being the companions from modern times get tangled up in the fucked up racist legal system of 1950s America, is maybe a bit too much of a confrontational idea for Doctor Who. Rosa is a confrontational episode by Doctor Who's standards. Other episodes in the series that have gone back to pre-civil rights era America have been very hesitant to touch on the fact that the past was a very racist place, but I applaud Rosa for going as far as you could go with the realism in an all-ages sci-fi show. I don't think I've ever seen or heard a Doctor Who historical piece that's made the past feel this dangerous before. A past that was pretty much current events when Doctor Who itself first aired. I mean, Rosa brings up the lynching of Emmett Till in the first 10 minutes. And you got the Doctor emphasising just how delicate history is and nervously having to restrain herself and her companions from blatantly coming across as out of place in time and their own values clashing with that of those around them. And that's essentially what the monster is here. Deeply ingrained bigotry that feels impossible to combat firsthand, emphasising just how brave Rosa and the civil rights campaigners needed to be. There's some pretty sharp writing in this one. You feel really immersed in this ugly piece of American history, and it doesn't feel safe in any way. I understand the desire here was to pay tribute to Rosa Parks, and removing the current plot of alien racist from the future comes back to upset the flow of events in Rosa's life and disrupt the civil rights movement, would mean that you kinda have to have Rosa as an incidental character rather than the impetus for the episode. Thing is though, I kinda like that Martin Luther King shows up briefly as an incidental character, and Ryan doesn't realise that he's just met the most important civil rights figurehead ever, and he isn't really all that well known yet. That's a humanising moment there, because you often forget that historical figures were originally people before they were figureheads and legends. I mean, that's why Rosa Parks was such an inspiring figure to begin with, a working class black lady who stood up to the system when all felt hopeless. I suppose that's part of why this episode's connected with people and why it was conceived in the first place, to reinforce and remind us that these were real people, not events in a history book. This is extra important when it comes to the civil rights movement because there is this tendency among white people to see history as the civil rights movement happened and then racism magically disappeared overnight, when that really wasn't the case. When you look at the grand scope of history, the civil rights movement really wasn't that long ago, and support for it at the time was far from unanimous. There are still people around who remember segregated America. You're not going to wipe these attitudes out overnight with a piece of legislation when it's as deep-rooted in society as it was. It's almost like we think of a society where open and upfront racism was institutionalised as a different species to us. And an episode where we're actually confronted with these attitudes head-on and humanise the people involved in it is a superb idea. Make this difficult part of history feel real, not just a distant concept. No, this is what humans were capable of and still are, and that's what's terrifying. The only problem is that the current plot's kind of encumbered the whole Enterprise and generated some problems, though yes, I do understand why it's here. An important part of doing an episode in 1950s Alabama is, as said, making racism feel real, but you've also got to avoid reinforcing this collective comforting myth that racism ended here. I mean, it's kind of depressing to know that racist attitudes still persist in the far, far future, and having this guy come back in order to undo a key event in the civil rights movement to, as he says, keep you in your place, is a good idea to demonstrate just that, but what that kind of does is force the Doctor and the other characters to spend a lot of the runtime just flatly explaining historical events that you kind of need to get out there so everyone can follow along with it, but it can kind of come across as just copying and pasting paragraphs from a Wikipedia page into a script on occasion, when it was my understanding that the episode was trying to do more than just list off some facts about Rosa Parks' protest. They literally do the Doctor as the teacher writing facts on the board and brainstorming, and the class call out the answers. Like, you want to hide the fact that you're essentially giving kids a history lesson here. Otherwise they'll go, wait, I'm learning here? Oh my god, ew, I have cooties! Also, I find it hard to believe that Ryan doesn't properly know who Rosa Parks was if his Nam was so knowledgeable about civil rights history. They seem to just make him ask that to provoke the opening logline in said Wikipedia article. Don't get me wrong, the Doctor and co figuring out how to keep history on track and defend it from basically the meddling monk as a racist alien greaser is engaging and involving. Also, I did really enjoy the Doctor in this one. Her confrontation with racist meddling monk is fucking badass. She's confrontational, calculating and clever, and you just want someone to stand up to this guy, and it feels very cathartic watching her do so. The bit where she smashes the vortex manipulator is just awesome. The only problem with this plot, though, is that it means the episode's trying to pull triple duty in emphasising just how important this moment in history was and paying tribute to Rosa Parks, emphasising that racist attitudes continue to exist after the civil rights movement, and confront the viewers with the nasty reality of segregation. I felt the reflection on racism that Yaz and Ryan have experienced in the future was a bit too short and conciliatory when it should have been holding this thing together that yes, the past is almost like an alien planet and things have gotten better, but it is still humans doing this, and that Yaz and Ryan recognise the traces of this environment that still exist in modern times. What I'm saying is doing everything the episode's expecting itself to do in 50 minutes is a massive ask. I don't know, I mostly say this episode probably should have been a pure historical because I just feel uncomfortable engineering it so the TARDIS crew have to get this close to Rosa's refusal to move. Admittedly, this setup could have been handled a lot worse. I know a lot of people would have imagined when they heard the premise, you know, New Who here, which has always had a tendency to treat the Doctor as this oh so special and important and amazing inspiring figure. You can just imagine the show having the Doctor inspire Rosa to do what she did or just help in some way because oh my god, the Doctor is so amazing and inspiring and that's why Rosa did what she did. And yes, that would horrifically undermine an incredibly brave lady standing up to the fucked up system. This is one of the most inspiring moments in history, and maybe one of the key issues with just the idea of doing The Doctor Meets Rosa Parks at all is just that this is such an important and beautiful part of history that just touching it at all could end up feeling disrespectful. What they've had them do is done tastefully. Their involvement in getting history back on track when a racist meddling monk ruins it is ensuring that what would have happened anyway will definitely happen. But, and I really struggle to put my finger on precisely why, I just feel uncomfortable retconning the Doctor and Co into the background of this particular historical event. It doesn't undermine Rosa's brave stand against the system, but just changing anything about the everyday reality of this moment in history or rewriting it in some way, even if it is in a very indirect way, it just doesn't quite sit right with me. That and Nathaniel from Council of Geeks has pointed out a particularly troubling interpretation of the episode in light of recent events in a brilliant and heartfelt video, link in the description. You can read this scene and this entire episode in a myriad of ways, and I'm really conflicted about it, to be honest. Then I feel uncomfortable coming to any conclusions because, you know, white guy here, I don't have the necessary experience to talk as any kind of authority on this topic, and yes, I do keep saying contradictory things, and if I've got any of this wrong, I do apologise. One thing I can safely say that I didn't like at all was the song set to Rosa's protest at the end. The opening scene of Rosa's first encounter with James Blake was just a straight recreation of events, and it feels very real and harsh and brutal and sets the scene incredibly well. But I just felt the music and overall montagey feel of this bit was overkill when it would have been powerful enough on its own. Don't get me wrong with anything I've said in this video, I did enjoy Rosa a lot. The whole raffle ploy is very funny, and I love that the Doctor's name dropping of historical figures that she's friends with actually served a purpose as part of the plot rather than just being there for the sake of it. The episode does look amazing too. I particularly loved this transition from day to night shot. It's really visually inventive. The performances are wonderful on all fronts as well, apart from a few shonky bits, but it genuinely feels like you're in segregation-era America. And I am actually starting to warm to the companions now as well. I'm glad to see this episode's connected with people, and honestly, it's about as good as an episode where the Doctor and Co show up in segregation-era America could possibly be, because there are so many potential issues with just doing this in the first place that I'm surprised this episode even exists at all. It was a very big risk, and I'll give the Christian era of Doctor Who its dues for making the show a talking point among the wider audience again. Rosa is a very interesting episode. So interesting that I haven't had to go off topic at any point and start making jokes about killer ladders or something. I actually had some substance to sink my teeth into this time. Nommy, tasty substance. More, Chris, more substance. We must feed.